Now, I understand that this gathering this evening is being broadcast. I didn't know about that until I received a letter from a little English boy. And he said in this letter, "I'll be listening in to you tonight. That is, if the wireless doesn't break down as it usually does." He evidently hasn't got much faith in the wireless. But anyway, I hope that little boy is listening in and that the wireless hasn't broken down, because I want to take this opportunity of sending from Australia a message to the millions of people who are listening tonight of goodwill and encouragement from our land. And in particular, a message to the children of this country, because we know that they are having a very tough time. We can assure them that Australia is behind them in spirit and that she will continue to do all she possibly can to make their lot a little easier in the future.
Don Bradman speaking at the Cricket Writers' Club dinner in 1948, which welcomed his Australian team to England. It's a measure of Bradman's stature, as well as the mood of the time, that he was able to make those remarks without sounding in the least bit outrageous, and also that such an occasion should have been the subject of a live broadcast. Bradman was leading one of the greatest cricket teams ever against an England team which had suffered the deprivations of war more severely, particularly in the bowling department, though they had discovered Alec Bedser. Bradman's tour was like a royal progress, and it seemed almost inevitable that he should start the Test series at Trent Bridge with a century.
Up comes Benson, he bowls to Bradman outside the off stump, and Bradman plays him across on the offside. Straight to Cyril Washbrook. No run, 251 for 4. Australia 251 for 4. Bradman not 97. Hassett not 32. And up comes Benson, he bowls to Bradman, who hits him hard on the offside, and it's 4 runs all the way. That's Bradman's 100. Australia 255 for 4. Don Bradman 101 not out. 17th century against England. His 17th century against England. Bradman 101 not out.
Well, it was more remarkable even than John Arlott said, his 18th Test century against England. If Bradman was always the main problem for England's bowlers, their batsmen had to cope with a hostile fast attack of Lindwall and Miller.
Ian Johnson 1 for 15, Toshak 8 overs, 3 maidens, none for 22, none for 22. Now Miller comes in to bowl to Hutton. He's hit him on the shoulder, and it's right up in the shoulder. He bounces from there to Callan, and I can hear those boos. Shut up. They can tell you the story. Barnes, 4 overs, 1 maiden, none for 11. Barnes, 4 overs, 1 maiden, none for 11. Hutton is rubbing his shoulder. Miller is receiving continual abuse from the crowd for the short one that he bowled, that Hutton ducked, and that hit him on the shoulder. Hutton is 59 not out, Compton 36. And the booing continues. Miller runs in and refuses to bowl. He comes up to the wicket, and it's difficult for a bowler to bowl with continual booing going on as you approach the wicket. But they'll settle down in a minute. Hutton is 59, Compton 36, 117 for 2. There have been 8 sundries. They include 1 bye, 6 leg byes, and 1 no ball. 8 sundries, 6 leg byes, 1 bye, and 1 no ball. And the score is 2 for 117. Miller runs in again, bowling to Hutton. And it's 4. Nice shot down, a fine leg for 4 from Hutton to take him on a 63. A very nice fine leg glance, and that stumps for the night.
At 121 for 2 in England's second innings, and the crowd noticeably more excited by Miller's bowling there than was Alan McGilvray. Having conceded a first innings deficit of 334, England was still up against it, but the next day belonged to Dennis Compton.
Johnson again to Compton. A forward defensive shot again. He's not taking any chances, waiting for the very The bad ball, if it should come, yes, here comes the field. Bradman driving them in, bringing them in. Johnston rather asleep down at long leg. It has to be called up. Enormous long strides, comes flopping in. And Compton has a look round. How many more balls in this over? Two more. They're going to keep Dennis Compton pinned down there, if they possibly can, so as to have a go at Evans the other end. It's all fascinating cricket, this. Bradman, the shrewd, astute captain, brings Harvey right up to mid-wicket. They're all close in now, and it's a question of 4. Then Dennis walks down the wicket, walks right down the wicket, and places the ball down through the slips for a very lazy single, which is a very shrewd thing to do. And, of course, he's got 150 now. Waving his bat high above his head.
Compton's innings ended at 183 when he fell on his stumps trying to avoid a bouncer from Miller. Australia dismissed England for 441, leaving themselves 98 to win, but Bradman had a rare and interesting failure.
Betzer now bowls to Bradman. That one came in and brought a smile to Bradman's face as I look at him through the glasses here as he nodded in appreciation of a good ball to Betzer as it dipped in sharply from outside the off stump, with Bradman playing just a dead bat shot, dropping the bat onto the ball to push it away just in front of him. 1 for 48, Barnes 37. Bradman has not yet scored. Now Bradman awaits Betzer. Up he comes. Another good one too. Patted in the cover, starts off for a run, then puts his hand up in policeman fashion to send Barnes back, and Washbrook returns to Betzer. Nicely placed field. There's that same leg trap as that Betzer took his wicket in the first innings with Len Hutton, the same player, in exactly the same position. Betzer to Bradman. This one he snicks to. He's caught again there. Just the same thing for a duck. Well, what do you know about that? Hutton was standing right in line with it. I told you where he was, and then he did exactly the same thing as in the first innings, and Bradman is out for a duck. 2 for 48. Well, did you hear that cheer? You wouldn't read about that happening twice to Bradman.
There was also a curious end to the match.
2 for 93, Barnes 60, Hassett 20. Up comes Young, left arm round the wicket to Barnes. He swings it round, down it goes, right down to the boundary for 4. And they've pulled the stumps out, but it's only 97. 97 is the score, and they're running off the field with the stumps. They still want another run. Barnes is back in the pavilion. He's got the stumps. This is an extraordinary thing. I've never seen it happen before. They all grab the stump, run off the field. Barnes is back in the pavilion. He's got one stump with him. He comes back, stump in hand, and back he comes onto the ground.
The score was only a tie.
The score's a tie. Well, that's the most... Everyone of the players thought that the game was over. Now they've all got to put the stumps back, and Barnes has to run back from the pavilion with his stump.
The cricketers can't necessarily count, apparently.
That's a very interesting position, that they've drawn stumps. The umpires actually drew stumps at first. And now we welcome light programme listeners. There has been an extraordinary position at the Nottingham ground in that the score is 2 for 97. The players thought that was all they required for victory, and they pulled the stumps out and ran off the ground. But they want one run still. Barnes is 60, Hassett 20. Bradman is out without scoring.
Barnes has already
They're
got
screaming
back
now
once
to the umpire that Barnes is
hand.
out. He pulled the stumps out, as did all the other players, and the crowd are calling that Barnes must be out because of hit wicket.
Well, he wasn't, and Australia won by 8 wickets. They had another crushing victory at Lord's by 409 runs, after which the selectors decided that England's premier batsman Hutton was having too torrid a time at the hands of Lindwall and Miller to be good for team morale, and they dropped him for the Old Trafford Test for the only time in his career. This time it was Compton's turn to be in the wars.
Here's Lindwall moving into bowl to Compton. Another short one. This time he tries to hook it and does. But hits him first. On the head, yes, he's down on it too. He tried to hook it, hit the bat then onto his head, I think, and now he's being held up by Miller, and Compton is fairly badly hurt. He's been taken off the field. That ball struck him right above the left eye. And Compton's coming off the field now with Miller holding a handkerchief on his head, and it looks to be a fairly nasty injury that he's got as he's laying his head right back, walking off quite steadily now. And the ball first struck the bat, then his head. I lost it for a moment, saw him stumble and fall, went down on his knees, and they picked him up. And he's now being taken off the field with a handkerchief on his eye with Edridge supporting him, as is Bradman, Miller, and Barnes carrying the bat. And a general exodus of players there, with Compton suffering a fairly nasty knock on the head from a ball, a fast-rising ball from Lindwall. He tried to hook, and it caught him on the head.
But it was Compton who had the last word.
Here's the second ball, Toshak to Compton. That was on the wicket, and Compton middled it all right and put it straight to forward short leg Barnes, who is about 10 yards from the bat, possibly, instead of 3 or 4, as he frequently is. Toshak again to Compton, and an on-drive, and I think that's his 100. It's beaten mid-on. You can hear the cheers. Somebody's chasing it. Mid-on is chasing it. It's Bradman, and it's reached the boundary. Listen to the crowd. We're even cheering in here, stamping our feet. Well, Dennis Compton has never got a more gallant 100 than that one. It's his 5th century against Australia. He took 4 hours and 10 minutes of it, and he got all but 4, another ball from Toshak, and he's turned that down to long leg for another single. He's got all but 4 of his runs after he retired hurt with that bang on the head yesterday.
He made 145 not out in England's first innings of 363. Bedser and Pollard then dismissed Australia for 221, but with the 4th day lost to the weather, there wasn't enough time for England to force the victory, and with the draw leaving Australia 2 up with 2 to play, the Ashes had been retained. Hutton was back in the side at Headingley and made 81 of an opening stand of 168 with Washbrook, who went on to make 143. Edrich made 111 and Compton 79 in an England total of 496. Now Bradman rather enjoyed Headingley. His 4 previous Test innings there had brought him scores of 334, 304, 103 and 16. He was soon in and facing Bill Edrich.
One of these days I am convinced Edrich will burst on the way to the crease. As it is, he merely explodes when he gets there. It's an amazing action. He leans forward, goes up onto tiptoes, and gradually with a heel-swung gallop, he flings that one down at Bradman, and it moved in the air. It was over-pitched, but Bradman had to come late down on it to play it. Very late indeed. It's quite fast. It's not by any means as fast as Lindwall, and it's a slingy action, completely out of the normal traditions of fast bowling, but it certainly propels a ball very fast indeed from one set of wickets in the general direction of the other. There's another one. That's short, and Bradman's hooked it for 4. And that is fielded by a gentleman in a grey suit whose return to the wicket is not at all accurate. And at this juncture, Edrich decides that perhaps at least a forward short leg is something of a luxury, and waves him back as deep as the umpire, where he's forced to borrow Pollard's cap. That's Cranston. Pollard remains short. Cranston can't get Pollard's cap on. Edrich bowls to Bradman. He hooks him for another 4. 4 to square leg. 2 hooks for 4 of consecutive bowls, and they're Bradman hooks. They're not lifted. He rolls the wrist as he plays the stroke, and the ball goes out there like a flash all along the ground. Now Cranston, capless, is retreating into the country on the leg side. Not too far, but behind the square leg umpire. And Pollard, with his cap back, also retreats, but only about 2 yards. And Edrich comes up now and bowls again to Bradman. A full toss on his hips, glided away on the leg side. They take 1, they take 2, it's bounced out of Hutton's hands over the boundary for 4, giving Bradman 3 fours off this Edrich over.
But this was to be, by the Don's standards, a relative failure, out for 33, and at 68 for 3 in came the 19-year-old Neil Harvey for his first Test innings against England. He made 112, and following his lead, Australia kept their deficit to only 38. Nonetheless, England still retained the initiative, and Yardley was able to declare early on the final morning, setting Australia an apparently impossible 404 to win in just less than a full day on a turning pitch. Arthur Morris and Don Bradman made a mockery of that impossibility. Morris made 182, and Bradman was still there at the end with 173 to his name.
He was a pace bowler all day long. Whenever he was called upon, he did his job on a wicket that, if it suited any bowler, certainly suited a spinner. There was no leg spinner in the England side except Hutton or Compton when he bowls his left arm googly, and neither of those looked good enough to worry great batsmen who were bent on taking up England's challenge of fast runs. They took it up and they met it.
Well, now Cranston comes to meet to bowler Harvey. Harvey picks him off his toes, hits into the long on boundary, and he's stolen a stump, and the ball's crossed the boundary, and it's all over. And we greet our general overseas listeners at the moment that the great crowd surges all across the road, despite the police, all across the ground, despite the policemen, forms a corridor for the players as they go in, and Australia have won the 4th test at Headingley by 7 wickets.
And so to the final act at the Oval and the Dons' emotional farewell. After being dismissed for 52, England were probably glad to be overshadowed by such a momentous occasion.
The Australians have been batting now for what, 2 hours? 2 hours and a quarter, just over 2 hours and a quarter. Here's the applause for Bradman as he comes in. Well, it's a wonderful reception. The whole crowd is standing, and the England team are joining in, and led by Yardley. 3 cheers for the Don as he gets to the wicket. Yardley went up to Bradman and shook him by the hand, and then called for 3 cheers. And now the crowd settled down again. They've got 40 minutes more left for play, and Bradman is now taking guard. Hollis is going to bowl at him, and John Arlott shall describe the first ball. So come on, John.
Well, I don't think I'm as deadly as you are, Rex. I don't expect to get a wicket, but it's rather good to be here when Don Bradman comes in to bat his last test. And now here's Hollis to bowl to him from the Vauxhall end. He bowls, Bradman goes back across his wicket and pushes the ball gently in the direction of the Houses of Parliament, which are out beyond mid-off. It doesn't go that far, it merely goes to Watkins at silly mid-off. No runs, still 117 for 1. 2 slips, a silly mid-off and a forward short leg close to him as Hollis pitches the ball up slowly, and he's bowled. Bradman bowled Hollis not. Bowled Hollis not. And what do you say under those circumstances? I wonder if you see a ball very clearly in your last test in England, a ground where you played out some of the biggest cricket of your life, and where the opposing team have just stood round you and given you 3 cheers, and the crowd has clapped you all the way to the wicket. I wonder if you really see the ball at all.
John Arlott as stunned as the crowd. Australia duly won the match by an innings and 149 runs. Bradman, shortly to be knighted, always insists that he didn't know that just 4 runs in that innings would have sent him out of Test cricket with an average of 100. 5 years later, in Coronation Year, Australia returned under the captaincy of Lindsay Hassett, and still with Lindwall, Miller, Johnston, Morris and Harvey in the side. For the first time in modern times, England had a professional captain, Len Hutton, who led from the front, averaging 55 in the series, while Alec Bedser took 39 wickets, 14 of them in the drawn first test at Trent Bridge, including Neil Harvey twice.
Bedser bowls to Harvey. Harvey pecks up to another very good ball, watching it very closely. He's forced on the defensive, and once again it's picked up by May. Australia 2 for 50, having a lead of 105 runs. On the first innings, England scored 144. Bedser to Harvey. Harvey forces this one, trying to get it in between Kenyon at wide mid-off and Simpson in the cover, but Kenyon moved across and covered the ball pretty well, fielded it. There's a fairly big gap there, but Bedser, bowling as he is, outside the leg stump and on the leg stump, is pretty hard to get across
to get away on the offside. This one rode sharply, and Morris, and Harvey is out. A beautiful catch by Graveney. As he took a high one, it was a hook shot, and he hooked it fairly cleanly, and Graveney has caught him in that short leg position behind the wicket. And Harvey is out now for 2. Caught Graveney, bowled Betzer, and Australia have lost 3 wickets for 50. Morris not out 36. 3 wickets for 50, and Betzer has taken his 3rd wicket in the second innings at the loss of 16 runs.
Betzer's bowling pulled England back to a promising position in that match. With 2 days to go, they needed another 187 to win from their last 9 wickets, with Hutton 60 not out. But rain had the final say. At Lord's, both captains scored hundreds, but on the final day it was Australia who were on top, and only denied by the celebrated Bailey-Watson partnership for the 5th wicket, which lasted most of that day. Rain intervened at Old Trafford, although right at the end, with no chance of a result, Australia did collapse to Wardle to be 35 for 8 in their second innings. But they had the upper hand in the 4th draw at Headingley. All square for the final test at the Oval then, and it was England who took the 31-run advantage on first innings. When Laker and Locke had bowled Australia out for 162, the England target was only 132. Compton and Edrich were together at the end, and Morris, the unlikely bowler.
Morris, left hand over the wicket to Edrich. Another good ball, but Edrich follows it around, going through for a sharp single. Davidson picks the ball up and whizzes it back at the bowler's end, but they ran through for the single, which makes Edrich now 55. 2 wickets down for 128, 4 runs short. Compton facing Morris. Compton on 18, 4 runs short of the Ashes. Morris to Compton, short, and Morris hooks it. Davidson fields, and it would have been the Ashes. I think it would have been 4. Davidson fields at fine leg halfway to the fence, picking it up brilliantly in his left hand. Morris, with his face wreathed in smiles, now sends up 1 to Compton, short outside the leg stump. Compton hooks it, and there's the Ashes. England has won as the ball crashes to the boundary. 2 wickets down for 132, with Compton not out 22, and Edrich not out 55. 2 wickets for 132, and congratulations England, regaining the Ashes. And now the crowd are absolutely swarming the ground. They're coming across like ants, thousands and thousands of people right in the centre, keeping away from the actual wicket area. The players are having a most difficult time. I can see Dennis Compton and Bill Edrich being embraced, being kissed by girls and women, and being clapped on their backs. I think they'll practically be bruised by the time they get in. Now Bill Edrich has the bat held high. They're making a pathway for him as they gradually get into the pavilion. But thousands of people are assembled now in front of the broadcasting box, and there's a lane formed in between this thick crowd as the Australians too are being clapped on the back as they are making their way into the pavilion at the end of this test match.
The Australian commentator there was Bernard Kerr, and no wonder there was such euphoria after Australia had held the Ashes for a record 19 years. 18 months after that heady day at the Oval, they were to start the attempt to wrest them back again in Australia. And they started well with a crushing innings victory in Brisbane. England's new tear-away fast bowler, Frank Tyson, was wayward, but by the second test in Sydney, with a reduced run-up, he had become a force to be reckoned with. 4 wickets in the first innings restricted Australia's lead to 74, and Peter May's first 100 against Australia set them 223 to win. Tyson tore into them, and when Lindwall came in at 127 for 7, he knew that Tyson had a score to settle.
Field changes over as the right-hander Lindwall ready to take strike to Tyson, and there's quite a murmur going around the crowd now, as they probably are remembering that yesterday Tyson was unfortunate to get in the way of one from Lindwall. He turned his back completely on a ball that got up, and of course we all know that he was knocked out and had to be assisted from the field. Now Tyson moves in, bowls to Lindwall outside the off stump and came back at him, and Lindwall got an inside edge. The ball just bounced in front of him and goes out towards mid-on. You can hear the gasp going around the crowd then as Lindwall, shaping to play at a ball outside the off stump, found it coming back at him, and just found an inside edge and played it out to mid-on. Tyson bowling to 3 slips, a gully, a deep third man, extra cover, mid-on, a backward square leg and a fine leg deep on the fence. Tyson to Lindwall outside the off stump. He's bowled him. It came back on him. Bowled him. Knocked his off stump right out of the ground. Lindwall is out. Bowled Tyson for 8. Harvey is 55. 10 sundries. Australia 8 for 136. Well, that's the 4th time this morning that Tyson has hit the stumps. His figures now 5 for 54. And over to Arthur Gilligan.
Well, that's another well-pitched-up ball, and I think Tyson has taken a leaf out of Lindwall's book, because that's the 3rd time, I would say, he's hit the stumps with that Yorker. Lindwall tried to chop down on it and missed it, and his head went up in despair as he saw his off-stump knocked back. Now, Tyson has done a great job from the England side, and this game now has veered, I would say, in England's favour, but as Langley and Johnston to come in, Neil Harvey's still there. So don't let anybody imagine the game's over yet by a long chalk.
It did look all over soon after when Langley was bowled by Statham for naught. The last pair needed 78 to win, but one of them was Harvey, and he and Bill Johnston crept towards their target.
Here's Tyson to Johnson. Johnson plays a one-handed shot. It's a tennis shot and it goes straight through to the fence for 4. Crashing against the boundary right in front of the main pavilion stand. And really, I'll call that a Ken Rosewell shot. A beautiful backhand that went along the ground all the way, a one-handed right-hand shot, and from the time he hit it, it went screaming along the ground and crashed up against the boundary fence. Now Johnston is 11, Harvey is 92, 10 sundries, 9 wickets down for 184. Would somebody please pass a nerve tonic? 9 for 184. Now Tyson to Johnson. Johnson stands up very straight, has a look round the field in a real professional style. Here's Tyson to Johnston. Johnston tries to play the same sort of shot, and he's touched it, and he's caught by Evans, and the match is all over. There's an appeal, and Johnson is out. Caught Evans, bowled Tyson for 11. England wins. Australia dismissed for 184. The players congratulating each other. Spectators jumping over the fence. As soon as I have an opportunity, I'll call through the details of the scoreboard for you. But congratulations, England. England levelling now the Test series. Australia having won in Brisbane.
Tyson's 6 for 85, 10 wickets in the match, had given England victory by 38 runs, though the success of Tyson and Statham together had effectively ended the Test career of Alec Bedser, who had bowled in the first Test, although not fully fit. At Melbourne, Colin Cowdrey's first Test 100 prevented an England first innings rout, though again Australia took a first innings lead. As in Sydney, Tyson got to work in the second innings, with Australia chasing a target of 240. After starting the day confident of victory, the Australians were staring defeat in the face, with 9 wickets down.
I think one man must be mentioned this morning, as well as the bowlers, and that's the wicketkeeper Evans. He's put up a very fine performance again. He's been like a cat in hot bricks, diving here and taking that remarkable catch and got Harvey out. Now here's Tyson.
Tyson to carry on and bowl this time to Ian Johnson. To 2 slips, the gully, third man, cover mid-off, the offside field. Tyson racing in and over it comes, and he bowls to Johnson on the off stump, and Johnson attempts to crack him off the back foot. This ball outside the off stump goes through to Evans. Edrich at first slip, Hutton second. Wardle third man, Mayo in the gully. Statham cover. Appleyard at mid-off. Forward short leg, almost silly mid-on, is Cowdrey. Backward short leg is Compton. And long leg on the fence, Bailey. That's Tyson's field, who's bowling now to Ian Johnson, who's 3. Bill Johnston yet to score. Australia 9 for 110, needing 240 to win. And Tyson bowls to Johnson. And he bowls him on the off stump, and Johnson gets him down the gully. Steers it down there. Wardle coming in. They take one. One's all they'll get. Wardle comes to the ball, and there's his left arm return. Going into Evans' gloves now near the stumps. Johnson 4. Johnston yet to score. This gives Bill Johnston the strike. Australia 9 for 111. And so the field walks across for the left-hander. Edrich and Hutton still the slips, first and second. May in the gully. Bailey third man this time. Compton comes across to short fine leg. Now he's being sent square. No, he's not. Hutton leaves him there. Cowdrey coming up very close at short cover. Appleyard mid-off. Statham not quite mid-wicket, but wide mid-on. And at long leg this time is Wardle, who is third man for the right-hander. Well, now Bill Johnston moves into the wicket. You can see this enormous piece of plaster that covers the inside edge of his bat, and which I saw last night was very severely marked in red along the edge. And Tyson bowls to Bill Johnston now, and his ball beats him just outside the off stump. There's an appeal for a catch behind, and he's gone. A great catch by Evans, diving across. Evans rolling round on the ground, and Bill Johnston out, caught Evans, bowled Tyson for no score, and Australia all out for 111. Tyson's final figures being 7 for 27.
And the last voice there, with Arthur Gilligan, was to become more famous as a political broadcaster, Michael Charlton. The wickets were more evenly distributed in Adelaide, where England won by 5 wickets to retain the Ashes. The weather spoiled Hutton's farewell to Australia in Sydney, and at the start of the following English summer, Lumbago ended his Test career. In 1956, the Australians were back in England in pursuit of the Ashes they had lost 3 years before. Ian Johnson led them against Len Hutton's successor, Peter May. Rain ruined the first Test at Trent Bridge, but at Lord's, Keith Miller had his moment.
And Truman is here again, bowls to Miller, a bouncer, and Miller carts that away on the leg side, and Richardson at long leg has got a mighty long run for it. He didn't quite middle it. They run a comfortable 2. 112 for 5, and the statisticians may rub their hands at this stand. It's now worth 33, of which Miller has scored 30. Dear sir, is this a record? In fact, I understand it isn't. Hornby and Barlow, I believe, for Lancashire years ago. Barlow had 1 out of the first 52, and Hornby the rest. I don't go in for statistics, but that's history, Arthur. Anything connected with Lancashire cricket's history. Truman in, bowls to Miller off the back foot, out on the offside, fielded by Watson running in from cover. Anyway, Hornby and Barlow, I believe, literature is enshrined by Mr. Francis Thompson. And it's still then 112 for 4, with this sudden change of the game. England, after gritting away, and Truman with his tail up, taking those 3 quick wickets, had looked like perhaps doing something rather better than a mere delaying action. But now this handsome batting of Miller's has changed the complexion of the game once again. And the lead's now 126, and Truman comes in, bowls to Miller. Miller gropes, and Evans has caught him most gloriously. And now all round the ground, the entire crowd standing to this man again. Well, with 2 receptions like that, 3 in fact, in one day at Lord's, Miller should go to bed tonight a happy man. Men have made more than 30 runs in Tests here, but not so many of them have made them as handsomely as that. Glorious stuff, as if he was trying to acknowledge the crowd's cheers when he came in, when they cheered him all the way to the wicket.
Miller had made 28 in Australia's first innings of 285, had taken 5 wickets in England's reply of 171, and when they needed 372 to win, would take another 5. Amazingly, his only 10-wicket haul in Test cricket, and this in his last appearance at Lord's. Their 185-run win put Australia 1 up in the series. England's retaliation was to call up a selector, Cyril Washbrook, who made 98 in their innings victory at Headingley, where Peter May made a century. At Old Trafford, it was the Reverend David Shepherd, later to become Bishop of Liverpool, who came back and made 100, as did Peter Richardson. But that Test match is remembered for another prodigious feat. After England had made 459, Jim Laker took an amazing 9 for 37 to bowl Australia out for 84. They followed on, and Laker already had the first 6 wickets in his bag when he bowled to the rock of the Australian resistance, Colin MacDonald.
Well, it's Laker to resume after tea, and from round the wicket from the Stretford end he comes in and bowls to MacDonald. MacDonald back, turns that one into the leg trap. May have let it run off his pad to Oakman at backward short leg. MacDonald 89, Benno 15, Australia 6 for 181. Laker round the wicket to MacDonald, comes in and bowls further up. MacDonald back here, an appeal for a catch, and he's caught in the leg trap, caught by Oakman. As he played back to that ball, it ran from the bat to the pad, and that's the one they wanted. McDonald, Court Oakman, bowled Laker for 89, and Australia are 7 for 181.
And Laker still hadn't finished. He had another 2 under his belt before he bowled to the last man, wicketkeeper Len Maddox.
Now Laker comes in, bowls, and Maddox drives to cover. Well, Old Trafford has redeemed itself with a last hour of flawless sunshine. And Laker comes in again, hair flopping, bowls, turns it on to Maddox, appeals, he's out, LBW, and Laker's taken all 10. The first man to congratulate him is Ian Johnson. And England have won by an innings and 170, and Laker has taken all 10 wickets for 53 in the second innings, all 10 for 53.
Laker's 19 wickets for 90 had secured England's hold on the Ashes. At the Oval in the final test, the selectors pulled off yet another coup with the recall of Dennis Compton, when knee injury had seemed likely to have ended his career. It was the perfect romantic comeback as he moved into the 90s.
Archer again to Compton on 94. In he comes, bowls a quicker one. Compton tries to leg glance him. May have held back his shot at the very last minute. And once again, a few hand claps for Langley, whose leg side taking of the fast bowlers has been absolutely top class. He moves almost imperceptibly into position. All of a sudden, you're conscious that he's there, and you realize how far he's gone to get there. Fine keeper Langley, who swallows 99 out of the 100 chances that come his way. Next ball, Archer to Compton. He turns it round on the leg side, and he's caught by Davidson at leg slip. Compton caught Davidson, bowled Archer, leaning forward to it. He flicked it off his pads to Davidson at leg slip, who caught him. And Compton is out, caught Davidson, bowled Archer for 94. And listen to this. Compton out, caught Davidson, bowled Archer for 94, 6 runs short of 100 that nobody in the world would have begrudged him. When you've done what Compton's done, to come back from the injury that he's had and play like he's played here today, well, to get so close and yet to miss is almost a tragedy. It's been a wonderful knock, and the whole pavilion, the whole ground stood to him as he left the field. A great and a popular cricketer.
Rain was to designate this test as a draw, though not before Jim Laker had again embarrassed Australia in the second innings at 27 for 5. England had taken the series 2-1 and retained the Ashes.